Welcome to 3 on Tap, where the drinks are free, but the experience wasn't. My name is Greg, and I'm joined today by Spencer and Brian. And today we're talking about my favorite holiday movie of all time and why it might just be the accidental case study of modern nonprofit leadership. So let's dive in for one more round. No, it is not Die Hard. But let's kick off with what are we drinking today? Brian?
Agua.
You're a designated driver. What are you doing?
Agua in the big.
Remember, you got to hold it in front of you.
In the big yellow cup.
Agua.
The big
yellow cup. Spencer, what do you got?
I'm going with the High Noon Pear Seltzer this afternoon.
High Noon. Okay. And I've got one that I've never had before. This is by Fort Point Beer Company, and it's called Animal. It's a tropical IPA.
Interesting.
So before we get into anything heavy today, I just want to ask, have either of you watched It's a Wonderful Life recently?
I have not. Katie loves that movie and watches it at least once a year. It's not, again, I don't watch a ton of movies. If it's not sports, I'm probably not super invested in it.
I don't know, Spence. I think Katie might be good people.
She's very good people. She is definitely my better half.
You might be hitting above your weight. Well, it's a family tradition for us. Like every Thanksgiving, we do the turkey, we get together, we talk, and then the whole next day, it's just Christmas movies all day. I mean, we watch, the family favorites. It's White Christmas and The Grinch, and inevitably, It's a Wonderful Life comes up. And it's one of, arguably my favorite Christmas movies. I love watching it every year. I really look forward to it. And this was the first time that I watched it after stepping away from my role with Boys and Girls Club. And I got to tell you, the movie just hit me totally different this year. I'm sitting there, I'm watching, I'm, hanging out with my kids. It's all black and white. And here's George Bailey, who's the quintessential optimist, do-it-yourselfer. I'm going to get things done. And I saw a lot of myself in George Bailey over the years. And it's definitely a character that I've emulated in different ways. But watching it this time around, it was just like, is this an allegory for nonprofit professionalism?
Okay, so who's George Bailey? No, okay. Is he the green guy? Is he the green guy that has the dog and the sled? Now, in what way are you saying that, Greg? When you say being an allegory for, because I get it for us when we were in our CEO roles in the nonprofit world. Every CEO has that George Bailey optimism, and we're going to get there, and don't worry about it, and people realize what we do, and they're going to help us out, and people will step up, and all those different things. So in that regard, yes. But tell me what you're thinking? What's your thoughts based on, now that you've watched it year one away from being a CEO of a nonprofit, how are you seeing it? Where's your points?
Well, one, I think it's a story that it's an allegory that extends beyond CEO work. And we can get into that later on. But I think just look at the character. You start off with this really positive, endearing young kid who, over the course of his life, develops and talks about dreams and opportunities and things that he wants to do to connect himself to this wonderful life that he inevitably sacrifices on the altar of the greater good,
right,
of helping his community, of helping his brother, of helping his family, of helping the family business, and then stepping into his community and helping them, low-income folks afford homes. And I go back to those moments of he's talking about how he wants this big suitcase because he's going to travel the world and see all of these things. And he takes that step back when he's confronted by his father's death and says, I can't do any of that. My community needs me. I have to step up. And I think that's the first part of the conversation. The second part of the conversation comes when he has absolutely reached his point of exhaustion and mental break and has nothing left in the tank. And then people show up to help. It's almost like he's navigating this space as the archetypical hero, this quintessential selfless person who's out there to better his community, only to be completely allowed to walk off the plank. And just as he's got one toe back on that plank, they pull him back and say, nope, we got your back, Jack. And I guess it just feels like so much of this work in the nonprofit space requires that professionals and leaders make personal and sometimes really costly sacrifices without any real recognition or turnaround.
We've talked about before about it being a calling, first of all, because, there's, I've said this many times, you don't get in the nonprofit world to get rich. You get in the nonprofit world to make the world a better place because you believe in it. So you've got to have that built in. But I'll tell you, this is a great example that you work in nonprofits, so nothing, you should get no happiness. You should be paid a nickel above, what homeless people get paid and stuff like that, because you're doing it for the good of the world. I remember, and this might have been before your guys' time a little bit, maybe Spencer was around at the time, but when Roxanne Spillett was president of the Boys and Girls Club of America, she had to go. I resented this so much. She had to go in front of Congress and justify her salary, which at the time was like $890,000 a year. And they were like grilling her and like, you're a nonprofit and how can you do that? And do you feel like you're taking away from your mission and your kids and all those different things? And we're talking that a woman had to go stand up in front of a bunch of men and get yelled at, basically. And then you say, under Roxanne's leadership, she went from 1,000 clubs to 4,000 clubs and went from a $900 million budget to a $1.2 billion budget. And we went from 900,000 kids a day to 4 million kids a day going into a club somewhere in the world. And they're grilling her for that. And I was like, if you had those numbers and you worked for, an oil company, you'd be having your regular salary would be like 50 million. You know what I mean? So to me, it's always stupid that people have this mentality that because you work for a nonprofit, here's my thing. If we didn't have Roxanne's brilliance, would we have ever been at 4,000 clubs, for example? So paying her is, or would we be mired in, hey, we're at 1,500 now. You know what I mean? If I always made this analogy, and this kind of goes to George Bailey kind of thing in your first part, Greg. I always told my board, I said, if we had the opportunity to hire someone just brilliant thinker, brilliant Oprah, Steve Jobs, somebody just amazing. And they said, we want $1 million. And my budget for the whole club is like 1.5. Do you do it? And I asked that hypothetically because my answer would be yes, because within a year, that money, they would be so brilliant. They would serve more kids. They would bring more money in. They would, all those connections they have. You pay for what you get, or you get what you pay for, I should say, said it backwards. So, yeah, that frustrates the hell out of me that anybody who goes, well, you work at nonprofit, you're a jerk for taking $100,000 salary. Well, screw you. I've still got family to feed, and you know what? Under my leadership, we grew, or we did this, or we did that. I saved more dogs and built more houses so you shouldn't, I think it's dumb that we have to even argue this and just feel this way that we're not good people because we're taking money from the mission. No. Because of the systems that I'm assuming all three of us have put in place, our organizations are still pushing forward and thriving, and they have endowments and they have these positions in place to be great and still help kids, in our case.
Yeah. And the salary part for sure. Good. One of the cool things for our listeners that aren't Boys and Girls Club background, BGCA does a salary study every couple of years that kind of benchmarks
JCCMP, baby.
That's right. Kind of benchmarks different salary ranges based on budget size and geography and some other things. And I remember looking at mine, after we'd quadrupled our budget size and our impact, our kids served was up like 600%. and I wasn't even in the 25th percentile of salary, and I had some. It didn't end well, and that was a big part of the reason that I ended up stepping away from that organization. It's because I didn't feel like, one, I was being valued, but two, anytime I needed to hire somebody, it was, we were paying bare bones. So we've got to be able to support our people. Especially in rural Southeast Arkansas, you're not going to get somebody to come to our community when the school is paying minimum 50,000 and we're offering somebody 32,000 for a full-time role. That is a 12-month position versus a 9-month role. But I think more than just the salary piece, and I think we see this in Mr. Bailey is the support, right? I mean, salary is, we've still got bills to pay. We've still got to be able to support our families financially, but the expectation a lot of times in nonprofit work, especially in Boys and Girls Club or youth development or anything like that, is that we're at everything all the time. And that is just not sustainable. Because they're in that line of work, there's going to be a ball game every night. There's going to be a concert. There's going to be an event. There's going to be something every night, especially if you're in multiple communities. And it is absolutely asinine to expect your executives, your professional staff, to be at every event all the time. And I think whether it's boards or communities or even just cultural expectations, I think that's something that's really got to shift so that we have healthy leaders in our nonprofits, because otherwise we get burned out. And the expectation for somebody to be there 24/7 is not what we want, and that's not how organizations thrive. You look at the for-profit world, and outside of your Fortune 100 companies, that those CEOs, most of them choose that life. You don't see that. The expectation is 8 to 5, 8 to 6. Maybe.
Oh shoot, they don't.
But you're not having
my salary was never. I always tell my staff when they give me grief about the salary kind of thing. And I'm not trying to harp on the salary because I know, Greg, that's not your point. But I'd be like, on a 40-hour work week, you're getting a good deal. This is like a 60 to 70-hour work week always.
Shoot, even on a 40-hour work week, I was making less per hour than my wife as a school teacher.
And that's kind of where I want to go too. Like, I mean, I think the salary question is definitely something that's ubiquitous across nonprofits, right? You get what you pay for. But I do think that, there were a couple of points that you both made. Brian, you called it a calling. In addition to that, Spencer, you were talking about the support systems and whether it's sustainable, that we have to be at all things for all time, right? And so I think I'd love to dive more into that more, right? So when you're talking about it being a calling, I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody listening to this podcast. When you get into nonprofit, as Brian said, you don't do it because you're going to make $1 million or you're going to get rich doing it. You do it because you see a need and you want to commit yourself to a mission and you care about it and you're going to make it happen, right? We are scrappy in the best and worst way. I guess looking at my professional trajectory, I spent a lot of my early years working in nonprofit being at everything. Like I had a lot of flexibility in my time. I mean, hell, when I started working with a nonprofit, I was living in the back of my car, having kind of like a Henry David Thoreau summer while I waited for friends to move into the area so that we could get a house together. And I had the flexibility in those early years to go to the art shows and go to the school meetings and meet with families and be present. And then at some point I recognized that I was spending so much time being everywhere for everyone that I wasn't anywhere for myself. And I think there's a point where all of us as professionals have to take a step back and recognize when we have engaged in a system or created a system where sacrifice has stopped being admirable to something that's alarming and borderline unhealthy. And I wish more of us took the time to really sit with that, because the mission's important, but at the end of the day, you are an individual with goals and things that you enjoy, so you'd like to pursue.
Well, you're also the brilliant person making this mission happen. So if you burn out, what's going to happen to, I mean, my best friend is like the smartest dude I know. Like he's got a PhD in statistical theory, and he was the head actuary for Genentech, the giant genetics company. He would actually approve when there was enough data to do drug studies on humans for different drugs for weight loss or lungs or cancer or whatever. And one of the things that they did at Genentech, which was great, and he's like, you work hard, you do these projects, you meet your deadlines, and they give him every year, he gets a 3-month sabbatical. Now, if you're in between projects, I mean, you finish your project, then you get 3 months after that. So they want you to finish what you're doing. Here's your project. Here's what we want you to do. We want to test these drugs. Yes or no. Once the day he's done, he gets 3 months off. See you in 3 months. Get together, and he still gets a salary, by the way. He still gets fully paid like he regularly would, to where go relax. Go spend time with your family. Go to the soccer game, whatever. But do all that because they value that. But in the nonprofit, it's go and go and go and then go some more and then go some more. And part of the other problem, I think, and this goes back to, God rest her soul, Sabrina, and her love for board development. I was like, most boards don't get it. My growth was similar to Spencer's. And the board did give me a raise. They raised me by 100%. I was getting 40. They jumped me to 80. And one board member voted against it. And his logic was, I don't make that much, which means he was not educated about what we do, nor did he care about our performance. And as a nonprofit person, I should definitely not be making more than he should be as a realtor kind of thing. So it's also just dealing with the general public and them not getting what you do, because I've always maintained, as much as I couldn't go to my board president's bank and become a banker in a day, I go, you can't come and handle this. You can't handle a kid that gets cut and a parent who's yelling at you and 2 staff that don't show up and the food order is behind and all those different things. You can't handle that. It's a skill set.
I mean, it's a great question. Like, what do you do when the call's coming from inside the house? Spencer, you looked like you had a gut visceral reaction to Brian's experience about pay.
Oh, I got a raise. I went from 48 to 62, and that was it. There was no bonuses for anything, nothing. And again, I mean, I was in like the 20th percentile for clubs our size. We went from one of the smallest clubs in the state to one of the largest, and it was like, yeah, no, we're not doing anything else for you. It was, there was more criticism about time management than anything. It's like everything is getting done. There's not anything that's not done. It might not be done when you want it done, but it's done by the deadline, and like stuff's still happening. And it was just to hear 100% increase. That would be that's awesome. Yeah,
and he was worth every penny.
Oh, absolutely.
But I do think that there's something in that nugget, Brian, right? Like, this is one, these kinds of workflows are not sustainable. No one can work 80 hours a week for years on end and not burn out. I mean, I love that.
And care the way that we care, because that none of us three were going home the night that the staff had to go home and one kid's ride didn't come pick them up. I'll stay with them. Yeah, Karen, I'll call my wife. Hey, Karen, I'm going to be late tonight because Billy Johnson's mom didn't come pick him up, or she's running late, so I'll be there as quick as I can. So, yeah, so there's also that level of care that we have. I mean, I know so many people who are, bankers, whatever. It's up. What time is it? It's 5? Later. Hey, can I ask you about? No, you cannot. I'm 5. I'm later. That kind of thing. That's not our job.
And you can do that because there's no human cost, right? Like, I mean, this is the George Bailey conundrum. He can't go to school. He can't go traveling because if he does, there are people that he cares about who are going to suffer.
Well, and that, to speak to that on a personal note, I spent about half a year at a YMCA, and it was, I had to make some choices based on my family, right? I mean, I've got for those of you that don't know that are listening, I've got a 3-year-old who is level 3 autistic and has some other neurodevelopmental challenges. She's one of about 300 people worldwide diagnosed with what's called FOXP1 syndrome, and it is obviously a very rare neurological thing. And she goes to speech therapy and occupational therapy and physical therapy multiple times a week. And at the end of the day, like I'm going to be home with my kid, and that became a point of contention. I was having to take her to therapy. I was having to be home to support my family, and that became an issue with my board. And essentially, they expected me there 24 hours a day because the weight room was open 24 hours a day. So we have a full team of people, like, and my phone number is there. If you need something, call me. Nobody ever did. Because the team knew how to handle those things, but the unwritten expectation was that I would work to burnout and nobody else would have to do anything. And I'm sorry, like I'm just not going to play that because that's
and I think that's the problem, right? The table is set for burnout, right? Like the perception from the private world is that if you're in this kind of work, because you have heart and care and creativity to do it, you must suffer in order for it to be successful. And even when you are successful beyond those circumstances, there's still this layer of skepticism as to whether or not you are worthy of their support and attention. I go back to George. Here's George. He gets to the point where his bank is collapsing because of an error made by a staff member. It's completely unrelated to him. And, he has to contend with the fact that, I'm worth more dead than I am alive in this moment because of my life insurance policy. And there's no one who will help me. And that's when the community rallies and wakes up and says, hey, this person has hit a personal crisis and he's done so much for us. We really need to pitch in. And I think that's in the telling a noble story, right? Like you've got this archetype and this hero who's come and is challenged and done well for others and then needs help and has vulnerability and complexity, and the community rallies around them to make sure that they're okay too. Like I get that that's a great story. At the same time, why did we let it get to that point?
They don't do it till you're in the dead zone.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. That's the issue too.
In many respects, I look at those scenarios and I think, God, how many board members, staff members, community members, volunteers could have pulled me aside, mentors and supervisors could have pulled me aside at any stage in my career and said, hey, love your passion, love that you're doing these things. But, the world is bigger than this. Right? Your world has to be bigger than this. And I'm grateful that, I can look at George with a different lens today, but it was kind of a gut punch to watch the movie with my family because I was just like, boy, when you're standing on the bridge alone, looking at the hot mess behind you.
Well, it was said in the wonderful words of the rock band Cinderella. Don't know what you got till it's gone. People will appreciate you. Well, I've been gone from the Marshall Club for almost 10 years. And I get people who they still don't have a CEO after 2 years. They've been doing a search for 2 years. And I've got called, would you like to come back? No. Because I always maintain, I told my wife this actually one time we were talking. If we were ever to split up, no matter what, it's going to be done, because much like my job, much like my time at the Boys and Girls Club in both clubs, I gave you got 110% of me. You got good stuff. You grew. We had a great team, all that good stuff. I haven't changed. So it's not going to get better. It's going to be the same. You know what I mean? Once it's done, it's done. So sorry, you should have kept me when you had me. And I don't mean this as a props to me, props to us for being awesome and all that kind of stuff. It's more of a case of, you're getting, I'm going to go back to the boards part. You're getting a lot of well-intentioned people who don't know diddly about your thing. They know about their business. They know about marketing, and they know about banking, or they know about, insurance or any of those kind of things. And the way you run those businesses is not remotely close to how you run a nonprofit, and they don't get it. I mean, my board president one time told me, that we had a monthly subscription price, and that was where it capped, $30 a month. And I did it purely for marketing, is your kid worth $1 a day kind of thing. That's all I did it. They were pointing out that all these services they're getting, that's worth $3,000-$4,000 a year. If you think about the food and you think about the computers, we should just up our prices like $500. And I said, you're going to price out 50% of our customers. You've never struggled to open the fridge and have nothing there. You've never had to say, yes, I'll take that second shift because, let me make sure somebody can pick up the kids because we need the money to pay the electricity bill. They don't live in that world. So all of our customers at a Boys and Girls Club are, in essence, freeloaders. And they're not, they can see a deal when they see one. If they knew what they were doing, if they would have gotten their education, they wouldn't have gotten pregnant when they were 17, whatever. They come up with 1,001 reasons. And I was like, you're not getting this, are you? And that's where it goes more, in my opinion, Greg, is a lot of this also goes to the board development and really letting them understand what you're doing.
That's a whole nother podcast, right, about board dynamics and CEO dynamics and how to set them up for success. I struggle with that for a number of reasons. I wonder if the model itself is broken in so many ways, because to your point, a nonprofit isn't, it's not just a tax status, it's a business model. I mean, you're running a company.
Business first.
And, the lack of respect for the expertise in the room. There's no appreciation for the hours that have taken place and the development that has taken place outside of that 1 hour a month board meeting. And while I appreciate the support in the form of soliciting donations when that happens, when it doesn't feel like I'm pulling teeth to get us there, or with regard to guidance and mentorship, let's not pretend that any board member knows what it's like to occupy that chair, and to know that, if you don't find the funds, someone is going to go without. The kid might go home and find an empty fridge because they weren't able to go to the Boys and Girls Club and get the only meal that they were going to have that afternoon.
Exactly. Well, I think our next, well, Spencer's is next, but I mean, it's talking about getting those people on board and understanding what you do, but also, like you said, Greg, is respecting what we do, because every single one of my board members goes, I can do that job. And I said, no, you couldn't. No, you couldn't. I've seen you get mad like that. And when the kid who's having a bad day comes and screams and has a fit and just goes, and screams at the top of their lungs, and we've all seen that, you throw that kid out, or you say, come into my office, let's relax. I'm going to put everything that I'm doing right now on hold so I can deal with you and help you feel better as a child, which is what our job is anyway. You wouldn't be able to do that. That's just one example. So yeah, they don't get, I don't think maybe this George Bailey thing is leading us to, maybe we need a better full, like maybe this will be a future podcast. That one day we all sit down and say, let's make a job description for a CEO of any nonprofit, understanding and fundraising and the skill set and everything like that. Because a lot of times they clearly don't get it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, it really begs the question, does a happy ending require catastrophe? Right. And I feel like so many of our relationships, whether the call is coming from inside the house or outside of the house, people are waiting to support you until you get to your darkest hour. And so what are things that we can do as leaders and mentors or professionals in the space, or for anyone who happens to be listening, to offer support? Like, how do you do that before the catastrophe is yawning at the gate?
Yeah, I think we've got to do something in that space for sure. As nonprofit leaders, we got to be able to take care of our people. And mental health is such a hot button issue right now, but it's having been there a couple of years ago, and I can talk about this now, but I was in grad school. We were Katie was pregnant, and then we were raising a newborn. She was in grad school. We were in a huge period of growth at the club. There was a lot going on, and I remember looking at my newborn, and she was maybe 6 months old, and thinking, I'm really going to miss you, because I was done, because there was no support system. I was burned out. I was struggling with a lot of different things, and ready to jump off that bridge. And luckily was able to recognize that and get some help. But it goes back to, I don't know if you guys were still involved in the point where at one point BGCA came out and said, hey, we're going to do this partnership with BetterHelp and everybody's going to get access to free therapy, and then they didn't do it. But I think we've got to be able to do something in our organizations, whether it's Boys and Girls Clubs, whether it's YMCAs, whether it's the grassroots organizations, to make sure that our people have the resources to cope, to make those healthy decisions, to have their own processes and structures, so that nobody runs up against that, because that's a terrible place to be.
I mean, just having time for themselves, like we've all said, just to live your life and take your kid to speech therapy, or Greg to do stuff with our. I mean, why did I leave my last club? Because I was missing my son's games, because I was staying at the club till forever. That's part of it. And I'm glad you mentioned, Spencer, mental health. And I'm glad Boys and Girls Club, by the way, again, this is turning into a Boys and Girls, less of a nonprofit podcast than Boys and Girls Club podcast. But I appreciate that BGCA 5 years ago, before everybody knew what trauma-informed care was, created a trauma-informed care department to work and help better our people. Because Greg, you're in California, so they're a little more on the understanding the mental health side. I know this from when I was a specialist for BGCA on trauma-informed care, and listening to some of the stuff that the people from California and Oregon and Arizona, were saying about trauma-informed care. I go, that's never happening here, because if you want me to spend $25,000 a year on a trauma-informed care salary, which I see the benefits, I get the benefits. That's never getting in when you live in Texas football world of rub some dirt on it stuff, kind of, same with Arkansas, same with Mississippi, all those kind of places where if you're a male, especially, and you say, oh, I've got mental health problems, you're a wuss, you're weak. That's what it is. You can see the difference I could never convince my board to spend $25,000 on a salary to get somebody to do just trauma-informed care and work with the kids and work with the staff and stuff like that. So you've got to start building stuff like that in. The best that I could ever do, especially in North Texas, because our board was so insane at times, was I would set it up so each of my staff only had a 4-day work week. We'd rotate who got the Mondays or the Fridays off for long weekends, but work from home, just be on call in case of emergency. We might have to call you in, but I never called anybody in. Just something so you can rest, because my club is way better with my staff, even if I have to go with them going 4 days a week, than without my staff. And they're working way more than 40 hours a week anyway, just by nature of the job.
I had a staff when I was a middle manager for a nonprofit who, I kind of developed a penchant for finding incredible people and then training them up and putting them on a path within the nonprofit space, which isn't hard, because, people fall in love with the work, and that's great to be a part of. And she came to me about a year after she moved on to a different organization with a different supervisor, and told me, hey, I just don't feel like I'm getting the kind of support that I need. Like, I'm doing all the same things. I'm crushing these things. I'm engaging with my community in a really deep way, but I don't feel like my supervisor gets it and gets me or provides me with any kind of recognition or support for the things that I'm doing. And my response in that moment, because I navigated those situations too. I mean, George Bailey, right? You're there doing everything for your community, and it feels like you're doing it in a vacuum, right? And I told her, for me, when I'm navigating those spaces, I try and be that for someone else. If I need to be recognized, or if I'm feeling like the work I'm doing isn't being seen, then I look for the work that others are doing, and I choose to see it, and I choose to recognize it, and I choose to celebrate it, right? And even if it's not someone seeing the work that I'm doing, I'm still getting a piece of that recognition. I'm still getting that connection to refill my cup enough to push forward. In that same vein, listening to kind of the mental health struggles that you were navigating, Spencer, what are things that people could have done? What are practical things that support mechanisms that people could have offered to give you more opportunity in that regard?
I think there's so many, not even like formal things at that point. It's just a check-in goes a long way. A board member that calls just to check on you is a fantastic addition to any social circle, right? And I can tell you that our board was didn't care about much of anything. And yeah, yeah, you have. It was just being kind of isolated. A good board makes introductions. In 5.5 years, I didn't have a single board member say, "Hey, let's go to lunch with this person," and just make an introduction. Outside of one consultant, and that wasn't a introduction as much as a sales pitch. And just to not have being an outsider in that community and not being from there and having all of that pressure going on, nobody ever saying, "Hey, how are you? Is everything okay?" That would have gone so far. And building in opportunities for breaks. That was one of the things, Brian. I had worked kind of behind the scenes for a while to try to figure out how I could have my staff work 4-day weeks. It would have gotten shot down in a heartbeat had I ever tried to implement it. But trying to figure out how I could have done that. But what we did was when I came on, uh, our summers were from the day school got out to the day school started back, the club was open, which is great for kids and families. It's terrible for staff. And so I said, "Look, we've got to do something different. We need a break. We need training. We need the building needs a break. We need rest." And so I started giving them breaks. There was a week at the front of the summer, a week in the middle of the summer, July, the 4th of July week, and a week at the end of the summer. And we shut down. And we would do some training if we need to. We'd bring out our professional staff for 2 or 3 days just to catch up on anything. But they always got long weekends on both ends of those. But the expectation, like if I was ever out of the office, it was a problem. And so to one, just to be recognized, we qualified for, maybe this is selfish of me, but I feel the way I feel about it. We qualified for all sorts of awards based on our growth and our trajectory and all of the things. And our board never nominated us for any of them. You can't win unless you have somebody championing that. And so kind of to see that I was consistently pushing and working and blood, sweat, and tears going into this organization for no recognition was rough. Uh, so just to kind of, one, be recognized, two, just to check on people at a personal level, I think goes a long way. And then three, allowing people to take breaks. Yeah, I had vacation time, but I tried to take some vacation time one year. At the end of the year, I had like a week left, and because I'd taken some Fridays off for deer season, but I took a week off at the end of December, and our community had a Christmas parade that day. So I just went. I took Ellie, my daughter, and we went as community members. And I got reamed out for that, for not being at work, for not being there at the club's tent or whatever. And I was like, what's the point in vacation time if I can't use it? If I'm expected to work even when I'm not working? And just to be questioned on every little thing and not to be allowed to do, as long as the deliverables are there, who cares? And so I think to answer your question, Greg, because that was a lot, realistic expectations, understanding that people are human and need rest, and just caring enough to check in on a personal level occasionally just goes a long way.
Gosh, I hear you saying check in on a personal level, and I think that also just depends on who, right? Like if I had had other CEOs reach out, that would have been meaningful, right? And it depends on where you are in your career, right? If you're a professional development staff member, or if you're a line staff, or you're a middle manager in a nonprofit, you've got more of a group that you can rely on. When you're heading the nonprofit, the higher you go up, the more isolated you become. But I remember feeling that when I had board members checking in on me, that it was almost like a threat, that information could be weaponized against you. Your emotional vulnerability could be weaponized against you in some way. And so, creating space for honest check-ins with honest care and authentic empathy, yeah, absolutely. We should all make time for things like that, but do so with the intent that you're part of a team, and that team values, respects, and loves the work that you do, and that who you are as a person.
Well, respect you as a professional. That's the other thing. Again, I'll maintain that 90% of my board members, in the history of board members that I had, of all the hundreds of people that have rolled through, felt like they could do the job, and they could do a better job. And I could be like, yeah, you're a total baloney head. No, you can't.
Brian, that's the second or third time I've heard you use the term baloney head. I like that. I'm going to steal that.
Thank you. I try to use it a lot because it's less offensive than some of the other things I could say.
It's always good to have one or two of those in your back pocket.
Okay, so we're getting into the end of the hour here. And I want to be respectful of time. But we're headed toward the end of the year. As we record this, it's December. We're getting ready to leave for Thanksgiving holidays and New Year's shortly after there. Any resolutions for this coming year?
I don't ever do resolutions. Nah, because I always feel like it's always like when I hear people talk about their bucket list. Oh, their bucket list. Because the way I see a bucket list is when you say you have this list of things to do that you want to do before you die. Once you hit that last one, you say, "Hey God, you can get me. I'm ready to die." So I never do resolutions. I always try to keep getting better, help make the world a better place. Be around for my kid, be around for my wife. Maybe I'll say, hey, I want to go see a foreign country. And, if we can afford it, if we have time to go, whatever. But for the most part, I don't ever do resolutions because, how can you fix this? Come home, baby.
Well, hey, in that same vein, that was my resolution for this last year, right? I was like, I have done enough. I'm doing everything that I can. We've grown so much. I've got a great family. I've got a lot to be thankful for. I will continue to try and be as good a person as I can. But God damn it, 2025, you need to do your part too. I wanted the year to be better, right? And now that we're on the other end of the dumpster fire that was 2025, it's very clear that this year did not understand the assignment. Walking into where I was there to where I am today, I've got a lot to be thankful for, but there's a lot that was thrown at us that I just had no idea was coming down the track. All right. Well, listeners, if this year's been harder than you expected, if you've doubted yourself or the systems you believe in, if you've watched people do absolutely unhinged things while leaving others to carry far more than they ever should have to, I think we all want you to know that you're not broken, you're not weak, and you're not imagining it. A lot of what feels personal right now is structural. A lot of what feels like failure is actually fatigue. And a lot of what you're carrying was never meant to be carried alone. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion is proof of commitment, and you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep something alive. And needing support doesn't mean you didn't try hard enough. If all you do this year was that you keep going, that counts. But if you want to take a break, that's fine too. If you have to let go of things you once loved, just stay upright. That's all good. we still believe in community and we still believe in showing up for each other. And I'm here for you boys. So thank you so much.
It's a good word, Greg. Thank you for that. Yeah, to our listeners, absolutely. Find people you trust, find people you believe in. Don't sacrifice yourself or your family on the altar of productivity.
There will always be more work to do.
Yep. And trust me, work as hard as you want. The day you say I quit is the day they find somebody else like that. So you're a cog. So take care of yourself first.
Okay. Well, that was an inspiring way to end it. We're all cogs.
Thank you. So I'm going to get you guys through.
You're welcome.
We're cogs.